Getting started with English language learners. How educators can meet the challenge. In understanding how language is learned, you need to distinguish three types of proficiency in English. First, there's conversational fluency in language. Second, there's discrete language skills. And third, it's academic language proficiency. Conversational fluency in language. Conversational fluency in language refers to the ability to carry on a conversation in a familiar face-to-face situations. Familiar is important because when we are in a familiar situation, we know what to expect. We know what it's like to be said in that situation. We know what kind of responses are appropriate. Face-to-face implies that there are many clues to the meaning that are non-linguistic in nature. For example, eye contact, facial expressions, gestures, intonation, etc. all contribute to the meaning. We can point to things that we see in our immediate environment. We can negotiate the meaning in a variety of ways. Secondly, native speakers of English have generally developed confident conversation fluency in the language by the time they enter school at grade 5. They have acquired what Noam Chomsky, the linguist, calls competence in the language. They have acquired the basic syntax or grammar of the language, and they have acquired high-frequency vocabulary of the language. This involves the use of high-frequency words in simple grammatical constructions. These are very different from the kind of words we find in academic text. Second language learners generally develop fluency within a year or two of exposure to the language either in school or in the environment. They pick it up on TV, they pick it up in the playground, they pick it up from instruction. Conversational fluency is important, but it's just the starting point for academic language development. Second language learners can perform very well in respect to conversational fluency within a year or two to exposure. Discrete language skills. When it comes to discrete language skills, we're talking about specific phonological literacy and grammatical knowledge that students acquire as a result of both direct instruction and engagement with language and literacy. Some of these discrete language skills are acquired early in schooling. For example, knowledge of the letters of the alphabet, knowledge of the sounds represented by individual and combinations of letters, the ability to decode written words into appropriate sounds. This is the focus of much early literacy instruction. Other discrete language skills continue to be acquired throughout schooling. For example, conventions about spellings, conventions about capitalization, punctuation, as well as information about grammatical rules. For example, students will pick up on the fact that pluralization in English generally involves adding s or es to words. There are many exceptions to this rule, of course. For example, if we take the verb take, the rule would say that the past tense should be take, but that's not the fact in case. It's took. When it comes to second language learners picking up discrete language skills, they can often pick up these skills as a result of direct instruction in them. They can pick them up before they have acquired a real deep knowledge of the language. So at the same time that they're developing conversational skills, they can pick up the sounds of the letters of the alphabet, they can pick up phonological awareness in the language, and they can pick up decoding skills in the language. This has been shown in the case of ESL students as well as students from majority language backgrounds who are in a second language immersion program. For example, students from English backgrounds in a dual language program. So, discrete language skills are important, but they are just a stepping stone to academic language proficiency. What the research also shows is that despite picking up word recognition skills in the second language in the early grades, there still remains major gaps in terms of vocabulary knowledge and other deeper aspects of proficiency in the second language. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about academic language proficiency. Academic language proficiency. Academic language proficiency refers to the ability to understand and produce increasingly complex oral and written language. As students progress through the grades, they encounter far more low-frequency words, and in English, these primarily come from Greek and Latin sources. They'll encounter complex syntax. For example, they'll have to deal with sentences that use the passive voice instead of the active voice. They'll have to deal with conditional sentences, they'll have to deal with sentences that have multiple clauses embedded in them, and they'll come across abstract expressions that virtually are never heard in everyday conversation. So, as students progress through the grades, they're required to understand linguistically and conceptually demanding text in the content areas, for example, in literature, language arts, social studies, science, and math. They have to use this language in an accurate and coherent way in their own writing. Research has repeatedly shown that second language learners usually require at least 5 years of exposure to academic English to catch up to native speaker norms. This may seem like a long time, but in fact, it's very easy to understand. When we realize both the complexity of academic English and the fact that students encounter academic English only in text. And second, the fact that they're catching up to a moving target. Native speakers of English are also expanding their vocabulary. They're expanding their reading and writing skills. So they're not standing still. They're not waiting for second language learners to catch up to them. So what this means is that ESL students have to run faster because they're catching up to a moving target. The development of reading comprehension ability in the content areas requires very different kinds of instruction than those that can be successful in developing discrete language skills. In particular, extensive reading of text is crucial for the expansion of vocabulary knowledge and development of academic language proficiency. Written text is the only reliable place where students will come across academic language. So, if they're not reading, they're not even in the ballpark. So, get your students reading. Get students to realize that they're carrying around in their heads a database with many of the most complex words in English in there. They should be searching this database as they're reading text and exploring language in ways that are exciting for them and hopefully fun for them.